the distress signal cut through the void of space like a knife through silence. It was weak, fragmented, and desperate. The transmission bounced from relay station to relay station across the galaxy, carrying with it the unmistakable sounds of terror and dying hope. Commander Zara Th of the Galactic Council monitoring station felt her 4 hearts skip a beat as the signal reached her console. The voice speaking was clearly Velthari, one of the most advanced species in the known galaxy. Their technology was centuries ahead of most civilizations, their ships nearly indestructible, their military prowess legendary. Emergency, this is Captain Thelmore of the Velthari exploration vessel Star's Edge. We are under attack by unknown hostiles, our shields are failing, they came from nowhere, ships we have never seen before. Static consumed the transmission for several long seconds before the voice returned, weaker now, filled with pain. We are dying, they are too fast, too strong, warning all vessels, stay away from Sector 47 Delta, the enemy shows no mercy, they take no prisoners, tell my family, tell them I tried. The transmission died into empty static. Zara Th stared at her console in shock. The Velthari were considered one of the 3 apex species in the galaxy, along with the crystal-based Silthek and the energy beings known as the Lumari. For someone to overwhelm a Velthari exploration vessel was almost impossible. These ships carried enough firepower to level small moons and defensive systems that could withstand the collapse of stars. She quickly forwarded the message through official channels, marking it with the highest priority codes. Within minutes, emergency sessions were being called across dozens of worlds. The Galactic Council had not faced a threat like this in over 3,000 years. On the crystal world of Silthara Prime, Elder Kethmore received the transmission with what could be described as crystalline horror. His light patterns flickered in distress as he played the message for the Council of Shards. Unknown attackers capable of overwhelming Velthari technology, he pulsed to his fellow elders. This represents a threat to all civilization. The Silthek had fought the Velthari in ancient wars and knew their capabilities better than anyone. If the Velthari were calling for help, the situation was beyond desperate. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The floating cities of the Aranal, the underwater cities of the Merkai, the hive minds of the Zeftol all received the transmission with growing alarm. Emergency fleets began mobilizing, but they were scattered across vast distances. It would take days, even weeks, for significant forces to reach Sector 47 Delta. Unknown to the panicking aliens, the distress call had traveled farther than expected. Hidden relay stations, secret monitoring posts, and classified communication networks had picked up the transmission and forwarded it through channels that the Galactic Council had forgotten existed. The signal reached the outer rim of the galaxy, where space was considered empty and lifeless. Here, in a region that galactic maps labeled as void space, massive vessels hung in the darkness between stars. They were angular and brutal in design, built for function rather than beauty. Scars from countless battles marked their hulls, and their weapon ports spoke of conflicts the galaxy had never witnessed. These were human ships. Aboard the dreadnought Indomitable, Admiral Sarah Chen sat in her command chair reviewing patrol reports when Lieutenant Morrison approached with a concerned expression. "Admiral, we're picking up a distress call. It's unusual." Chen looked up from her datapad. At 57, she had spent 33 years in the United Earth Defense Force, fighting in conflicts that had shaped humanity into something harder and deadlier than their ancestors could have imagined. Her graying hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her brown eyes had the look of someone who had seen too much and forgotten too little. "Define unusual, Lieutenant." "It's not from any human colony or ship. The language is completely foreign, but our translation software is working on it. What we can understand, it sounds like someone's getting massacred out there." Chen's expression hardened. "Put it through." The bridge fell silent as the Velthari captain's dying words filled the air. Even translated into English, the desperation and terror in the alien voice was unmistakable. Chen had heard similar transmissions before, during humanity's darkest hours, when Earth itself had faced extinction. "Analysis," she asked her senior staff. Commander Rodriguez, her tactical officer, spoke first. "Based on the signal's origin, it's coming from approximately 47 light-years from our current position. The attackers appear to be overwhelming superior technology, which suggests either massive numerical superiority or advanced tactics. Or both," added Dr. Yamazaki, the ship's Sena specialist. "Admiral, this is the first confirmed contact we've had with alien civilizations. The implications are enormous." Chen stood from her chair and walked to the main view screen, which currently showed the starfield ahead of them. Humanity had been alone for so long, expanding outward from Earth, colonizing worlds, building fleets, always wondering if they would find others among the stars. Now they had their answer. Computer, analyze the distress call for ship specifications and tactical information. Analysis complete, the ship's AI responded in its calm, emotionless voice. Based on energy signatures and technological references in the transmission, the attacked vessel possessed energy shielding, directed energy weapons, and faster-than-light communication capabilities. Estimated crew complement, 400 to 600 individuals. Chen's jaw tightened. A ship that size represented not just technology, but hundreds of lives. Someone's friends, families, loved ones. It didn't matter that they were aliens, they were people in trouble, and people who attacked those in need were the enemy. Mr. Rodriguez, status of the fleet? All ships are at ready status. The Indomitable, Retribution, Sword of Terra, Lightning Strike, and Void Hunter are operational and combat ready. Total complement, 18,000 personnel, full ammunition loads, and 6 months of supplies. Chen nodded slowly. The Fifth Fleet was one of humanity's most powerful battle groups, forged in the fires of the Resource Wars and the colonial rebellions. Each ship carried scars from conflicts that had pushed human military technology to its limits and beyond. Dr. Yamazaki, can we track the source of this transmission? Already working on it, Admiral. Based on signal degradation and relay patterns, I estimate we can reach the source in approximately 60 hours at maximum burn. Chen walked back to her chair but remained standing. Around the bridge, her crew watched her with the quiet attention of people who had served together through years of warfare. They knew that look in her eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to enter unknown territory. We don't know who these aliens are, what they're capable of, or whether they'll see us as friends or enemies. What we do know is that someone is in trouble, and others are causing that trouble. She paused, looking each of her senior officers in the eye. In my experience, people who prey on the helpless rarely limit themselves to just one victim. These attackers, whoever they are, represent a threat not just to the aliens calling for help, but potentially to us as well. We're going to investigate, and, if necessary, we're going to act. Commander Rodriguez smiled grimly. Standing orders, Admiral? Battle stations. Prepare for faster-than-light jump in 1 hour. All ships are to maintain communication silence once we enter the target system. We go in dark, we assess the situation, and we make our decision based on what we find. Chen sat down and activated her personal communication system. All hands, this is Admiral Chen. We have received a distress call from an unknown alien species under attack in Sector 47 Delta. The Fifth Fleet is moving to investigate. This may represent humanity's first contact with alien civilizations, and we will conduct ourselves accordingly. However, our primary mission remains unchanged: protect those who cannot protect themselves, and eliminate threats to innocent life. Battle stations in 59 minutes. Chen out. Throughout the 5 ships of the Fifth Fleet, 18,000 human sailors, soldiers, and Marines began preparing for something none of them had trained for, but all of them understood: the possibility of combat against an unknown enemy in defense of unknown allies. The ship's faster-than-light drives began spinning up, their exotic matter cores generating the fields that would tear holes in spacetime itself. Weapons systems came online, from point defense lasers to planet-cracking kinetic bombardment arrays. Fighter squadrons performed final checks on their craft, while Marines verified their equipment and planned for possible boarding actions. In her private quarters, Admiral Chen stood before a small shrine containing pictures of the soldiers who had died under her command over the years. Hundreds of faces looked back at her, men and women who had followed her into battle and never returned home. Well, people, she said quietly, looks like we're about to find out if humanity is alone after all. Whatever's out there, whoever needs our help, we won't let them down. Not today, not ever. She touched her wedding ring, thinking of her husband David back on Earth, probably tending his garden and wondering when she would come home. She thought of her daughter Lisa, now a doctor on Mars, and her son Michael, serving aboard the UES Defiance in another sector entirely. Then, she put those thoughts aside and focused on the task ahead. An unknown species was dying in the darkness between stars, and the only thing standing between them and extinction was a human fleet that the galaxy didn't even know existed. The irony wasn't lost on her. For thousands of years, humans had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now, when they finally had their answer, their first act would likely be one of war. Admiral Chen returned to the bridge as the final preparations were completed. Around her, the most advanced warship humanity had ever built hummed with barely contained power. In the void around the Indomitable, 4 other vessels waited for her command, their hulls gleaming dully in the starlight. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Commander Rodriguez announced. Chen settled into her command chair and looked at the tactical display showing their destination. Somewhere out there, aliens were fighting and dying. Somewhere out there, others were doing the killing. "Execute jump," she ordered. The 5 ships vanished into the void, carrying 18,000 humans toward humanity's first encounter with alien life. They left behind only empty space and the lingering traces of exotic radiation from their faster-than-light drives. Behind them, emergency sessions continued across the galaxy as alien civilizations struggled to comprehend the threat revealed by the Valtheri distress call. Fleets were mobilizing, but they were far away and moving slowly by the standards of the crisis. None of them knew that help was already on the way, or that it came from a species they had never encountered, bearing weapons they had never seen, driven by principles they might not understand. The galaxy was about to learn that humans had a very specific response to distress calls. They answered them, regardless of the cost. The transition from faster-than-light travel to normal space always made Admiral Chen's stomach clench, but she had learned to hide the discomfort years ago. Around her, the bridge crew performed their post-jump checks with the smooth efficiency of professionals who had done this thousands of times before. "Jump complete," reported Navigation Officer Kim. "All ships have arrived intact and are moving to defensive positions." "Passive sensors only," Chun ordered. "I want to know what's out there before they know we're here." The main viewscreen shifted to display the sensor readings from the system ahead of them. What they saw made everyone on the bridge fall silent. Debris fields stretched across hundreds of thousands of kilometers. The twisted remains of ships that had once been beautiful works of alien engineering now drifted lifeless through space. Some pieces were massive enough to have gravity of their own, pulling smaller fragments into slowly spinning clusters of destruction. "My God," whispered Dr. Yamazaki. "It's a graveyard." Commander Rodriguez was studying his tactical displays with grim focus. "I count at least 30 destroyed vessels, possibly more. The debris patterns suggest this battle happened recently, within the last few hours." Chen's jaw tightened. They had arrived too late to help the ship that had sent the distress call, but perhaps they could still learn something useful. "Any signs of life? Escape pods, emergency beacons, survivors?" "Scanning now," replied Lieutenant Morrison from the sensor station. "Wait. I'm picking up something. It's faint, but there are life signs approximately 40,000 kilometers to starboard. Looks like it might be an escape pod or emergency shelter." On screen. The viewscreen focused on a small, crystalline structure tumbling slowly through space. It was clearly of alien design, its surface covered in patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. "That's definitely artificial," Dr. Yamazaki confirmed. "The crystal formation appears to be some kind of emergency shelter. I'm detecting 3 life forms inside, but their biological signatures are unlike anything in our databases." Shen made her decision quickly. In situations like this, hesitation could mean the difference between life and death for survivors. "Launch a recovery shuttle. Full hazmat protocols, we don't know what we're dealing with. Dr. Yamazaki, you're leading the team. Take a full science crew and prepare for first contact." "Understood, Admiral. We'll be ready in 10 minutes." As the recovery team prepared to launch, Chen turned her attention back to the larger mystery surrounding them. "Mr. Rodriguez, analysis of the battle damage. What can you tell me about the attackers?" Rodriguez had been studying the debris fields since their arrival, and his expression was troubled. "It's unlike any weapon's signature I've ever seen. The damage patterns suggest some kind of directed energy weapons, but with characteristics that don't match anything in our databases. Whatever hit these ships was precise and devastating." "How precise?" "Look at this," Rodriguez highlighted several pieces of debris on the tactical display. "See how the hull breaches are focused on specific areas? Engineering sections, command centers, life support systems. This wasn't random bombardment, this was surgical strikes designed to disable and destroy with maximum efficiency." Dr. Yamazaki's voice came over the communication system from the shuttle bay. "Admiral, we're launching now. Estimated time to intercept the survivor pod is 12 minutes. Acknowledged. Keep an open channel and proceed with extreme caution. Chen watched the shuttle depart on the tactical display, a tiny dot moving through a field of wreckage that told the story of a one-sided massacre. The aliens who had sent the distress call had been outclassed by their attackers in every possible way. Admiral, Lieutenant Morrison called out urgently. I'm picking up new contacts. Multiple ships approaching from the outer system. The bridge instantly went to high alert. On screen. All ships, prepare for possible hostile contact. The view screen shifted to show 5 vessels approaching their position. They were unlike anything in human databases, sleek, predatory shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their hulls were a dark metal that appeared almost organic, and weapons ports were visible along their entire length. Those matched the energy signatures from the destroyed ships, Rodriguez confirmed. They're approximately 50,000 kilometers out and closing at high speed. Chen studied the approaching ships with the cold analysis of a career military officer. They were clearly designed for combat, their configurations optimized for speed and firepower rather than exploration or diplomacy. Estimated time to weapons range? 7 minutes at current speed, Rodriguez replied. Admiral, those ships are significantly larger than anything in our fleet. Each one appears to be roughly equivalent to a heavy cruiser. Chen nodded grimly. The human fleet consisted of 1 dreadnought, 2 battleships, and 2 cruisers, formidable by human standards, but they were outnumbered and potentially outgunned by an unknown enemy with superior technology. Signal the recovery shuttle to expedite their mission. We may need to leave this system in a hurry. Over the communication system, Dr. Yamazaki's voice carried the tension of someone working under extreme pressure. We're at the survivor pod now. Beginning recovery operations. The occupants appear to be severely injured but stable. How long do you need? 5 minutes minimum to safely extract them and prepare for emergency departure. Chen looked at the tactical display. The enemy ships would be in weapons range in 7 minutes, which meant the shuttle would still be vulnerable when the shooting started. All ships, battle stations. Prepare for defensive action. We hold position until the shuttle is recovered, then we reassess. Throughout the 5 ships of the human fleet, alarms sounded as 18,000 personnel prepared for humanity's first battle against alien opponents. Gun crews rushed to their stations, fighter squadrons prepared for launch, and damage control teams stood ready to respond to whatever weapons these unknown enemies possessed. The approaching ships had not yet responded to any communication attempts, and their steady approach suggested hostile intent. Chen had seen similar behavior patterns during the colonial wars, predators moving in for the kill, confident in their superiority. Admiral, Rodriguez reported, the enemy ships are beginning to spread into attack formation. Based on their positioning, they appear to be preparing for a coordinated assault. Any response to our communication attempts? Negative. They're maintaining communication silence. Chen considered her options. They could attempt to withdraw immediately, but that would mean abandoning the recovery shuttle and the alien survivors. They could try to communicate further, but the approaching ship's behavior suggested they weren't interested in talking. Or they could prepare to fight against unknown odds in defense of beings they had never met. For Admiral Sarah Chen, it wasn't really a choice at all. Dr. Yamazaki, status report. We have the survivors aboard and are beginning medical treatment. They're in bad shape, but they're alive. 2 appear to be some kind of crystalline species, the 3rd is. I'm not sure what it is. We need 3 more minutes to stabilize them for emergency acceleration. You have 2 minutes, Chen replied grimly. Enemy ships will be in weapons range shortly. She opened a fleet-wide communication channel. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We are about to engage an unknown enemy in defense of alien survivors and, potentially in defense of ourselves. We don't know their capabilities, their numbers, or their intentions beyond the fact that they apparently slaughter civilians without provocation. What we do know is our job: protect those who cannot protect themselves and eliminate threats to innocent life. All ships will engage as ordered and fight with distinction. That is all. The enemy ships continued their steady approach, their dark hulls seeming to absorb the starlight around them. At this distance, Chen could make out details of their construction, flowing lines that suggested advanced technology, weapon ports that spoke of devastating firepower, and an overall design philosophy that prioritized function over form. "They're beautiful," Dr. Yamazaki observed over the communication system as the shuttle raced back toward the fleet. "Terrifying, but beautiful." "Beauty is irrelevant if they're here to commit murder," Chen replied coldly. "Mr. Rodriguez, target acquisition? Targeting solutions ready for all 5 enemy vessels. Weapon systems are charged and ready to fire." Chen watched the tactical display as the shuttle carrying the alien survivors approached the Indomitable. They had perhaps 90 seconds before the enemy ships reached optimal weapons range, and 40 seconds after that before the shuttle was recovered. "Admiral," Lieutenant Morrison called out urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the lead enemy ship. It looks like they're charging weapons." Shen's decision was instantaneous. "All ships, open fire. Repeat, all ships engage the enemy." The darkness of space erupted in brilliant flashes of light as 5 human warships unleashed their full fury against the approaching alien vessels. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to significant fractions of light speed streaked across the void, followed by coherent energy beams and guided missiles carrying both conventional and exotic warheads. The lead enemy ship staggered under the impact of the surprise attack. Its dark hull, which had seemed so mysterious and threatening moments before, proved vulnerable to human weapons. Massive sections of armor plating vaporized under the focused fire from the human fleet, and secondary explosions bloomed along its length as internal systems overloaded. But the aliens were quick to recover from their surprise. The remaining 4 ships spread out and returned fire with weapons that defied human understanding. Beams of coherent energy that bent and twisted through space struck the human vessels, testing shields and armor that had been designed to withstand the most powerful weapons in humanity's arsenal. "Damage report," Chun ordered as the Indomitable shook under alien fire. "Forward shields down to 60%, Rodriguez replied, his fingers dancing over his tactical controls. "Hull integrity holding, but those energy weapons are unlike anything we've faced before." Dr. Yamazaki's shuttle had nearly reached the Indomitable, but the battle was intensifying around them. Alien energy beams lashed out with precision that spoke of advanced targeting systems, while human return fire focused on exploiting the weaknesses they had identified in enemy ship designs. "Shuttle recovered," Morrison reported. "Dr. Yamazaki and the survivors are aboard." "All ships, prepare for tactical withdrawal," Chen ordered. She had the information they needed and the survivors they had come to rescue. There was no point in risking the entire fleet in a prolonged engagement against an unknown enemy. But, as the human ships prepared to disengage, something unexpected happened. The alien vessels, which had been pressing their attack with cold efficiency, suddenly began to fall back. Their formation, which had been tight and coordinated, began to spread out into a more defensive posture. "They're retreating," Rodriguez observed with surprise. "Admiral, the enemy ships are moving to long-range positions." Chen studied the tactical display with confusion. The aliens had been winning the engagement, their weapons were more advanced, their ships were larger, and they had local superiority. There was no logical reason for them to withdraw. "Sensor sweep of the system," she ordered. "Something made them back off. I want to know what." The answer came 30 seconds later, when Lieutenant Morrison's voice carried a note of excitement that was completely unprofessional and absolutely justified. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive hyperspace signatures approaching the system. Multiple ships, heavy configurations, coming in fast. Origin? Unknown, but, based on the signatures, these are large vessels. Very large." Chen felt a chill run down her spine. If these were more enemy ships, the human fleet would be hopelessly outgunned. But, if they were Allied forces responding to the same distress call that had brought humanity here? The newcomers emerged from hyperspace in a display of power that made even the battle-hardened human crew gasp in amazement. 12 massive vessels materialized at the edge of the system, their hulls gleaming with crystalline formations that caught and reflected starlight in impossible patterns. "Those aren't the same design as our attackers," Dr. Yamazaki observed over the communication system. "And they're transmitting on multiple frequencies. Some of those signals match the linguistic patterns from the original distress call." Relief flooded through Chen as she realized what they were seeing. The cavalry has arrived. The alien reinforcements moved into the system with the confidence of a superior force dealing with an inferior enemy. The dark ships that had been slaughtering civilians and engaging the human fleet suddenly found themselves facing opponents who possessed technology equal to or superior to their own. What followed was less a battle than an execution. The crystalline ships moved through space with a grace that seemed almost alive, their formations flowing and shifting like schools of fish. Admiral Chen watched in fascination as they engaged the dark vessels that had been terrorizing the system. The weapons exchange was brief and decisive. Energy beams of impossible colors lanced out from the crystal ships, striking their targets with precision that made human gunnery look primitive. The dark ships, which had seemed so threatening moments before, were systematically dismantled by opponents who clearly understood their weaknesses. Admiral Rodriguez reported with professional admiration, "Those new arrivals are demonstrating tactical superiority that's impressive. They're not just outgunning the enemy, they're outthinking them." Within minutes, 3 of the 5 dark ships were destroyed outright, their hulls cracked open and bleeding atmosphere and energy into space. The remaining 2 vessels attempted to escape, but the crystalline ships were faster and more maneuverable. The chase was brief and brutal. When it was over, the system fell silent except for the background radiation from cooling wreckage and the gentle hum of active scanners. "Incoming transmission," Lieutenant Morrison announced. "Multiple sources, different languages. Our translation software is working, but it's going to take a few minutes." Chen nodded and opened a fleet communication channel. "All ships, stand down from general quarters but maintain defensive readiness. Dr. Yamazaki, how are our passengers?" "Stable for now," came the reply from the medical bay. "The crystalline beings appear to be from the same species as our rescuers, though their technology is different. The third survivor is unique. I've never seen anything like it. Can they communicate? We're working on it. The crystals seem to communicate through some kind of harmonic resonance, and our computers are learning to interpret it. The third being uses both vocal and electromagnetic patterns. It's fascinating." Chen was about to respond when Morrison interrupted urgently. "Admiral, we have a priority transmission coming through. The translation software has locked onto the primary communication frequency. Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was clearly artificial, processed through translation software that was obviously far more advanced than anything humanity possessed. But the emotion behind it was unmistakably real. "Unknown vessels, this is Fleet Commander Velthera of the Silthek Defense Force. We have detected your engagement with Kethmori raiders in defense of survivors from the merchant vessel Star's Edge. Your intervention prevented further casualties and allowed our response force to arrive in time to eliminate the threat." Chen considered her response carefully. This was humanity's first official contact with an alien civilization, and her next words would set the tone for whatever relationship followed. "Fleet Commander Velthera, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force 5th Fleet. We responded to a distress call from this system and acted to protect survivors. We are pleased to have assisted in eliminating the threat." There was a long pause before the response came. When it did, the artificial voice carried a note of confusion. "United Earth Defense Force? We have no record of this civilization in our databases. From what region of the galaxy do you originate?" Chen glanced at her senior officers. Dr. Yamazaki had joined them on the bridge and was monitoring the conversation with intense interest. "We originate from a system approximately 47 light-years from here. Our homeworld is called Earth, in what you probably designate as the Outer Rim territories." Another pause, longer this time. When Velthera responded, the surprise in her voice was evident even through the translation software. "The Outer Rim is considered uninhabitable. No known sentient species have successfully established colonies in that region due to the extreme conditions and isolation from galactic civilization." Dr. Yamazaki stepped forward. "Admiral, I think there may be a fundamental misunderstanding here. When they say uninhabitable, they might not mean the same thing we do." Chen nodded and activated the communication system again. "Fleet Commander, perhaps we should meet in person to discuss this situation more thoroughly. Do you have diplomatic protocols for first contact with unknown civilizations?" "We do," Velthera replied, though her voice carried a note of uncertainty. "However, first contact protocols typically involve species that have achieved a certain level of technological development and social integration with galactic civilization. Your vessel's capabilities suggest advanced technology, but your origin from the Outer Rim presents unique circumstances. We understand your concerns, Chen replied diplomatically. However, we have rescued survivors from your vessel, and they require medical attention that may exceed our capabilities. Would you be willing to coordinate a transfer? The response came more quickly this time. Of course. The welfare of survivors takes priority over diplomatic protocols. We will transmit coordinates for a neutral meeting point. Please prepare your medical data on the survivors for transfer to our medical teams. Rodriguez pulled Chen aside as the communication ended. Admiral, I think we need to be very careful here. These aliens seem friendly enough, but they clearly see us as primitives from an uninhabitable region. That could complicate things. Chen nodded grimly. She had dealt with similar attitudes during various colonial conflicts, where Earth forces were often underestimated by opponents who saw them as backwater militias rather than professional soldiers. The misperception usually worked to humanity's advantage, but it could also lead to dangerous misunderstandings. Dr. Yamazaki, prepare the survivors for transfer. I want full medical records, treatment logs, and your assessment of their species' physiology. Also prepare a cultural briefing on humanity, who we are, where we come from, and what our intentions are. Understood, Admiral. Should I include information about our technological capabilities? Shen considered this carefully. Basic information only. Let them draw their own conclusions about our technology based on what they can observe. Sometimes it's better to be underestimated than overestimated. Over the next 2 hours, both fleets moved to the designated meeting point, a neutral position away from the debris fields but still within the system. The contrast between the two groups of vessels was striking. The human ships were angular and functional, covered in sensor arrays and weapon systems that spoke of a militaristic civilization. The Silthek ships were organic curves and crystalline formations that suggested a species that had learned to work with natural forces rather than dominate them. The meeting took place aboard the Silthek flagship, a massive vessel that seemed to be grown rather than built. Admiral Chan led a small diplomatic team consisting of Dr. Yamazaki, Commander Rodriguez, and a marine security detail. The interior of the alien ship was unlike anything they had imagined. Corridors were formed from living crystal that provided its own illumination, and the air itself seemed to sparkle with microscopic formations that enhanced breathing for silicon-based lifeforms. Fleet Commander Velthera met them in what appeared to be a conference room, though the furniture was clearly designed for beings with very different physiology than humans. She was approximately 3 meters tall, her body composed of interconnected crystal formations that shifted and changed color as she moved. Her voice, when she spoke, came from harmonic vibrations in the crystalline structures rather than traditional vocal cords. Admiral Chen, she said through her translation device, welcome aboard the Harmony of Spheres. This is indeed a momentous occasion, first contact with a previously unknown sapient species. Chen inclined her head respectfully. Thank you for your hospitality, Fleet Commander. We are honored to meet representatives of galactic civilization. Velthera's crystals shifted to a warmer blue hue, which Dr. Yamazaki quietly noted might indicate pleasure or satisfaction. Your actions in rescuing survivors and engaging the Kethmori raiders were admirable, Velthera continued. However, I must admit to considerable confusion about your species and capabilities. Our databases indicate that the outer rim regions are subject to radiation levels, gravitational anomalies, and resource scarcity that should make complex life impossible. Dr. Yamazaki stepped forward. Fleet Commander, perhaps our definitions of habitability differ significantly. What you consider uninhabitable conditions may simply be normal environmental challenges for our species. Velthera's crystals flickered rapidly, a pattern that suggested surprise. You mean to say that your species evolved in high radiation, resource-poor environments with extreme gravitational stress? Among other challenges, yes, Chen replied calmly. Our homeworld experiences conditions that have required us to develop robust technologies and adaptive strategies for survival. The implications of this statement seemed to register slowly with the alien commander. Her crystals shifted through several color patterns before settling on a deep purple that Dr. Yamazaki suspected indicated deep thought or concern. Admiral, may I ask about your species' military capabilities? The engagement we observed suggested technologies and tactics that are unusual. Rodriguez spoke for the first time. Our military development has been driven by necessity, Fleet Commander. When resources are scarce and conditions are hostile, you learn to fight efficiently or you don't survive. Velthera was quiet for a long moment, her crystals cycling through colors that the humans couldn't interpret. Finally, she spoke again. Admiral Chen, I believe there has been a significant misunderstanding about your species' place in galactic civilization. What we witnessed today suggests that humanity may represent a more formidable civilization than our initial assessments indicated. Chen maintained her diplomatic composure, but inwardly she was beginning to understand the broader implications of this first contact. The galaxy was populated by species that had evolved in relatively benign environments, leading to advanced civilizations that prioritized knowledge and culture over military capability. Humanity, forged in the harsh conditions of Earth and driven by millennia of conflict, represented something entirely different. Fleet Commander, she said carefully, we have no interest in conflict with galactic civilization. Our intervention here was motivated purely by humanitarian concerns. However, we will defend ourselves and our allies if threatened. Of course, Velthara replied quickly. I did not mean to suggest otherwise. However, I think it would be beneficial for both our civilizations if we could arrange for more formal diplomatic contact. The Galactic Council should be informed of humanity's existence and capabilities. Dr. Yamazaki exchanged glances with Chen before speaking. What exactly is this Galactic Council? Velthara's explanation took nearly an hour, covering thousands of years of galactic history, the formation of various alliances and confederations, and the current political structure that governed most of known space. What emerged was a picture of a galaxy where warfare was rare, conflicts were resolved through negotiation and compromise, and military forces were primarily used for exploration and disaster response. The Kethmori raiders they had fought represented one of the few truly aggressive species in known space, and even they were usually contained by superior numbers and technology rather than tactical excellence. The diplomatic meeting aboard the Silthek flagship extended far longer than anyone had anticipated. What had begun as a simple survivor transfer had evolved into humanity's first comprehensive briefing on galactic civilization, and the implications were staggering. Fleet Commander Velthara had summoned additional experts via faster-than-light communication, and the conference room now hosted representatives from multiple species. Each new arrival brought fresh perspectives and growing amazement at humanity's capabilities. Elder Kethmore of the crystal-based Silthek had joined via holographic projection from the galactic core, his light patterns flickering with what Dr. Yamazaki was learning to recognize as intense curiosity. Ambassador Thelnara of the energy-based Lumari manifested as a shifting field of coherent plasma that somehow conveyed personality and emotion. Most surprising was Captain Zarthek of the Velthari military, whose four-armed humanoid form bore visible scars from conflicts with the same Kethmori raiders the humans had helped defeat. Let me ensure I understand correctly, Elder Kethmore pulsed through his translator. Your species evolved on a world with gravity 1.7 times galactic standard, radiation levels that would be lethal to most lifeforms, and weather patterns that include electromagnetic storms capable of disrupting spacetime itself? Admiral Chen nodded calmly. Earth's conditions required significant adaptation. Our technology and social structures developed to cope with environmental challenges that we now understand are rare in the galaxy. Captain Zarthek leaned forward with obvious interest. His people were warriors by galactic standards, but even they had never encountered anything like humanity's background. Admiral, during the engagement we observed, your ships demonstrated tactical coordination that suggests extensive combat experience. May I ask about your species' military history? Chen exchanged glances with Rodriguez before responding. Captain, humanity has been engaged in various forms of conflict throughout our recorded history. Resource competition, territorial disputes, ideological differences, warfare has been a constant feature of our development. The silence that followed this statement was profound. Ambassador Thelnara's plasma field shifted to colors that indicated shock, while Velthara's crystals cycled through patterns that Dr. Yamazaki was beginning to recognize as deep concern. Admiral, Velthara said carefully, when you say constant warfare, could you provide some context? In galactic terms, most species experience perhaps one significant conflict every 1,000 years, usually resolved through mediation. Rodriguez stepped forward. Fleet Commander, in the past century alone, humanity has engaged in 17 major conflicts, not counting smaller regional disputes, colonial skirmishes, or the ongoing security operations required to protect our trade routes and settlements. The aliens' reactions were immediate and dramatic. Elder Kethmore's light patterns became almost strobing, while Captain Zarthek's forearms moved in what appeared to be unconscious defensive postures. 17 major conflicts in 100 years? Ambassador Thelnara asked, her plasma field shifting to deep red patterns. How does your civilization maintain technological and social development under such conditions? Dr. Yamazaki answered this time. Necessity drives innovation. Many of our most significant technological advances emerged from military research programs. Competition and conflict, while unfortunate, have accelerated our development in ways that peaceful conditions might not have achieved. The concept seemed almost incomprehensible to the assembled aliens. Fleet Commander Velthara spoke for all of them when she said, "Admiral, I believe the Galactic Council must be informed of humanity's existence immediately. Your species represents something entirely unprecedented in our experience." Shen had been expecting this moment. Fleet Commander, before we proceed with broader diplomatic contact, I think it's important that we understand each other's intentions and capabilities more thoroughly. From what you've described, the galaxy is a generally peaceful place with established trade routes, diplomatic protocols, and conflict resolution mechanisms. That is correct, Velthara confirmed. Then, you should understand that humanity's integration into this system will require careful planning. We are not naturally aggressive, but we are prepared for aggression. We value peace, but we have extensive experience with war. We seek cooperation, but we will not accept domination. Captain Zarthek's scarred features showed what might have been respect. Admiral, your position is clear and reasonable. However, you should be aware that not all species in the galaxy will view humanity's capabilities with the same appreciation that we do. Elder Kethmore's projection flickered as he spoke. There are factions within the Galactic Council who have grown comfortable with the current balance of power. The introduction of a new species with advanced military capabilities may be seen as a destabilizing factor. Shen felt a chill at these words. She had seen similar political dynamics during humanity's colonial expansion, where established powers viewed newcomers as threats to existing arrangements. What kind of factions are we talking about? She asked. Ambassador Thelnara answered, her plasma field shifting to warning colors. The hegemony of ordered worlds believes that galactic civilization has achieved optimal stability under current leadership structures. They view change as inherently dangerous and have significant influence over council policies. The Trade Federation of Free Worlds, added Velthara, controls most commercial shipping lanes and resource distribution. They have benefited enormously from the current system and oppose any disruption to established trade patterns. Captain Zarthek's expression was grim. Most concerning is the Pacification Authority. They believe that military capabilities above certain thresholds represent threats to galactic peace and should be regulated. The implications of this statement were not lost on Shen or her officers. Regulated how? Rodriguez asked with dangerous quiet. Mandatory technology sharing, fleet size limitations, weapons restrictions, Zarthek replied. Species that refuse to comply face economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, or in extreme cases, preventive intervention. Shen's expression hardened. She had dealt with similar demands during the colonial wars, when Earth's government had attempted to limit colonial military development. The result had been a decade of bloody conflict that had forged humanity into something harder and more dangerous than their ancestors. Captain, she said carefully, has your species been subject to such regulation? Zarthek's forearms moved in patterns that suggested bitter amusement. The Velthari have been encouraged to reduce our fleet sizes and limit our weapons research. We complied partially, which is why the Kethmori raids have become increasingly successful. Our response capabilities have been deliberately weakened. Dr. Yamazaki leaned forward with interest. What about the other species represented here? Have the Silthek and Lamari faced similar pressures? Elder Kethmore's light patterns shifted to darker hues. The Silthek are considered acceptable because our military technologies focus on defense rather than offense. Our crystal ships are formidable, but they are designed to protect rather than conquer. The Lamari, Ambassador Thelnara added with obvious frustration, are energy beings. The Council views us as inherently non-threatening because we cannot occupy physical territory or control material resources in the same way as biological species. Shen was beginning to see the larger picture, and she didn't like what she saw. The galaxy was controlled by a political system that maintained peace through weakness rather than strength, and that system would view humanity as a fundamental threat to the established order. Fleet Commander Velthara, she said formally, I appreciate your honesty about galactic politics. However, I think you should understand something about humanity before we proceed further. Chen stood and walked to a projection display that Dr. Yamazaki had prepared showing Earth and its surrounding colonies. Humanity has never accepted external limitations on our sovereignty or our right to self-defense. We have fought wars against overwhelming odds, sacrificed entire generations, and rebuilt our civilization from ashes rather than surrender our independence. If the Galactic Council believes they can regulate humanity into compliance, they are gravely mistaken. The aliens absorbed this statement with varying degrees of alarm and fascination. Fleet Commander Velthara's crystals had shifted to deep purple, indicating what Dr. Yamazaki suspected was either deep thought or significant concern. Admiral, Velthara said carefully, are you suggesting that humanity would be willing to engage in conflict with the entire Galactic Council? Chen's reply was immediate and absolute. We would prefer peaceful coexistence and mutually beneficial relationships. But, if threatened with forced disarmament or external control, yes, humanity will fight. And, based on what I've learned today about galactic military capabilities, I believe we would win. The silence that followed was deafening. Captain Zarthek was the first to speak, and his voice carried a note of something that might have been hope. Admiral, there are many species who have grown tired of council oversight and regulation. The Velthari, despite our compliance, have never accepted the legitimacy of external control over sovereign species. If humanity were to offer an alternative to the current system, we're not looking to conquer anyone or overthrow existing governments, Chen replied firmly. But, we will defend ourselves and our allies. If other species choose to ally with us for mutual protection and benefit, we would welcome such relationships. Elder Kethmore's projection brightened with excitement. A defensive alliance between species committed to maintaining their sovereignty while cooperating for mutual benefit. It's an ancient concept, but one that the Council has systematically discouraged. Ambassador Thelnara's plasma field shifted to what Dr. Yamazaki was learning indicated enthusiasm. The Lamari have scientific capabilities that complement military technologies. If such an alliance were formed, we could contribute significantly to collective defense and development. Fleet Commander Velthara was quiet for a long moment before speaking. Admiral Chen, what you're suggesting would fundamentally alter the balance of power in the galaxy. The Council would not accept such a development peacefully. Chen's smile was cold and professional. Fleet Commander, humanity has been altering balances of power since we first picked up tools to defend ourselves. The Council is welcome to try peaceful negotiation, economic cooperation, and diplomatic engagement. But, if they choose conflict. She gestured toward the tactical display still showing the aftermath of the battle with the Kethmori raiders. Well, I think you've seen how that would end. The meeting continued for several more hours, covering technical specifications, political structures, and preliminary alliance agreements. By the time it concluded, the foundation had been laid for something unprecedented in galactic history, a military alliance between sovereign species committed to defending their independence against any threat, internal or external. As the human delegation prepared to return to their ships, Captain Zarthek approached Admiral Chen privately. Admiral, there is something else you should know. The Kethmori raiders you defeated today were not acting independently. They have been receiving support from Council factions who use them to justify increased regulation of military capabilities. Chen's expression darkened. Are you telling me that the attack on the merchant vessel was a false flag operation? Not exactly, Zarthek replied carefully. The Kethmori are genuinely hostile and would have attacked regardless. But their capabilities have been enhanced by technology transfers, and their activities have been encouraged. Chen absorbed this information with the cold anger of a professional soldier who had seen too much political manipulation during wartime. Captain, how many other species have suffered under this system? More than you might imagine, he replied grimly. The galaxy has been peaceful, Admiral, but peace enforced through weakness is not peace at all. It's simply delayed conflict. As the human shuttle returned to the Indomitable, Admiral Chen stared out at the stars surrounding them. Somewhere out there was Earth, humanity's home, still unaware that their children had just committed them to a galactic conflict that would determine the future of free civilization in the galaxy. But Chen felt no regret. Humanity had always fought for the right to determine their own destiny, and they would not stop now just because the battlefield had expanded to encompass entire star systems. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when peaceful species were pushed too far, and what it meant to face an enemy that had learned to fight among the stars. 6 months after first contact, the galaxy was transforming in ways that the Galactic Council had never imagined possible. What had begun as a simple response to a distress call had evolved into the most significant political and military realignment in recorded galactic history. Admiral Chen stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Terra Station, humanity's first permanent installation in what the galaxy called civilized space. Through the massive transparent aluminum windows, she could see a sight that would have been impossible to imagine a year ago, a joint fleet exercise involving ships from 17 different species, all united under the banner of the Free World's Defense Alliance. The vessels moved through space in perfect coordination, their diverse technologies and design philosophies blending into a unified force that represented something entirely new in galactic affairs. Crystalline Sylphec ships provided shield support for angular Velthari cruisers, while energy-based Lumare craft fed power to human kinetic weapons platforms. Dozens of other species contributed their unique capabilities to create a military force that was greater than the sum of its parts. Admiral Commander Rodriguez reported from his position at the Tactical Center, "The exercise is concluding successfully. All fleet commanders report readiness levels at maximum efficiency." Chen nodded with satisfaction. The Alliance had grown far beyond anything she had envisioned during that first meeting with Fleet Commander Velthara. Species after species had approached them, seeking alternatives to the Council's restrictive oversight. Each new member brought unique capabilities and perspectives that strengthened the whole. "Any word from the Council?" she asked. Dr. Yamazaki, now serving as humanity's chief diplomatic liaison, looked up from her communication array. "They're still demanding that we submit to integration protocols and accept mandatory fleet reductions. Chancellor Mordeth of the Hegemony has issued another statement calling us a destabilizing influence on galactic peace." Chen's expression was grim but unsurprised. The Galactic Council had spent the past 6 months trying various approaches to bring humanity and their allies into compliance with existing regulations. They had tried economic pressure, diplomatic isolation, and increasingly aggressive demands for submission to Council authority. All of these efforts had failed spectacularly. "Status of our home territories?" Chen asked. Captain Torres, who had recently arrived from Earth with the 7th Fleet, answered from his position near the strategic display. "All human colonies are secure and fortified. The new Alliance members have been sharing defensive technologies that have enhanced our capabilities significantly. Earth Defense Command reports that our home system is now protected by multi-layered shields that could withstand anything the Council might send against us." Chen walked to the central display showing the current political map of the galaxy. The territory controlled by the Free World's Defense Alliance was shown in blue, representing nearly 200 star systems across multiple galactic sectors. The Council's remaining territory was still vastly larger, but it was also increasingly unstable as more species questioned the legitimacy of forced compliance with Council regulations. "The real question," she said to her assembled staff, "is how long the Council will continue trying diplomatic solutions before they resort to military action." The answer came sooner than anyone expected. Fleet Commander Velthara's voice crackled through the communication system with urgent intensity. "Admiral Chen, we have a priority transmission from Council space. Large fleet movements detected throughout multiple sectors. It appears they're mobilizing for something significant." Chen activated the main communication array. "All senior officers to the command center immediately. Dr. Yamazaki, get me Ambassador Thelnara and Elder Kethmore on priority channels." Within minutes, the command center was filled with the leadership of the Free World's Defense Alliance. The holographic display showed a galaxy in motion as Council fleets began concentrating at strategic positions throughout their territory. Elder Kethmore's projection flickered with agitated light patterns. "Admiral, our intelligence networks report that Chancellor Mordeth has convinced the Council to authorize a pacification operation against Alliance territory. They're calling it the restoration of galactic stability." Ambassador Thelnara's energy field pulsed with angry reds and oranges. The Lumari monitoring stations have detected massive fleet buildups at 17 different staging areas. Based on the ship types and configurations, this is not a diplomatic mission. Chen studied the strategic displays with the cold analysis of someone who had spent decades preparing for exactly this moment. The Council forces were impressive, nearly 8,000 ships representing the combined militaries of dozens of species. It was the largest fleet assembled in galactic history. It was also exactly what she had been expecting. "Analysis, Mr. Rodriguez?" The Council fleet is organized into 3 main battle groups, Rodriguez replied, his fingers dancing over tactical controls. They're planning a coordinated assault on our major population centers, probably hoping to force quick surrenders before we can organize effective resistance. Captain Zarthek's scarred features appeared on the communication display from his flagship. Admiral, the Valtheri Intelligence Service has intercepted Council communications. They believe this will be a brief campaign to restore order and bring rebel worlds back into compliance. Their estimates suggest complete victory within 60 standard days. Chen's smile was cold and predatory. 60 days? That's optimistic of them. Dr. Yamazaki, activate Contingency Plan Omega. All Alliance fleets are to move to predetermined positions immediately. Throughout Alliance space, a plan that had been months in the making began to unfold. Ships that had appeared to be scattered randomly throughout various systems suddenly revealed themselves as part of a carefully orchestrated defensive strategy. Hidden bases came online, revealing weapons platforms and supply depots that had been constructed in secret. Entire star systems that the Council had dismissed as lightly defended transformed into heavily fortified strongholds. The galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented, a military campaign planned and executed by a species that had learned warfare in the hardest school imaginable. The Council's first wave struck the Alliance border world 72 hours later. What they encountered was nothing like what they had expected. Instead of the lightly defended colonies they had anticipated, Council forces found themselves facing layered defensive systems that turned each star system into a killing ground. Automated weapons platforms opened fire at ranges that exceeded Council military doctrine, while concealed minefields channeled attacking fleets into carefully prepared ambushes. The battle for the Kepler's rest system became legendary within days. A Council battle group of 400 ships attacked what their intelligence indicated was a minor mining colony defended by perhaps 50 vessels. Instead, they found themselves facing a coordinated defense that included hidden human dreadnoughts, Sylphec crystal fortresses, Valtheri mobile defense platforms, and weapons technologies that defied their understanding. The engagement lasted 18 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the attacking force. Not a single Council ship escaped to report what they had encountered. Admiral Chen watched the battle reports from the command center of Terra Station, surrounded by allies who had become family and friends forged in the fires of shared struggle. Battle Group 7 reports complete victory at Kepler's Rest, Rodriguez announced with professional satisfaction. No friendly casualties, minimal ammunition expenditure. New Eden system? Chen asked. Council assault fleet neutralized, replied Captain Torres. The Lumari energy web worked perfectly. 327 Council ships disabled or destroyed, 67 captured intact. Elder Kethmore's projection brightened with colors that Dr. Yamazaki had learned indicated fierce joy. Admiral, our defensive strategy is exceeding all projections. Council forces are encountering resistance levels they never imagined possible. Chen nodded grimly. They've spent so long enforcing peace through weakness that they've forgotten what happens when you push people too far. Status of the second wave? Fleet Commander Velthera's voice carried grim satisfaction. Our intelligence indicates that Chancellor Mordeth has ordered the mobilization of reserve fleets. They're committing everything they have to this campaign. Good, Chen replied coldly. Let them come. It's time the galaxy learned the difference between peace and victory. The second wave of Council attacks launched 1 week later with overwhelming force. Nearly 12,000 ships representing every major Council species descended on Alliance territory like an avalanche of fire and steel. They encountered a defense that had been preparing for this moment for months. At the Battle of Sanctuary Station, human tactical doctrine met Council overwhelming force in a collision that lit up entire star systems. The Alliance fleet, outnumbered 8-1, used mobility, coordination, and tactical innovation to turn the Council's numerical advantage into a liability. Ships designed for peaceful exploration and light police actions found themselves facing opponents who had learned to fight in environments where a single mistake meant extinction. The Council's carefully organized formations became death traps when human commanders used their own ships as bait to draw enemies into killing zones covered by Alliance firepower. The battle lasted 6 days and ended with the surrender of nearly 4,000 Council ships. It was the largest naval defeat in recorded galactic history. But the real shock came afterward, when Admiral Chen's terms for the Council's surrender reached every corner of the galaxy. The Free World's Defense Alliance did not demand territory, tribute, or subjugation of conquered enemies. Instead, they offered something the galaxy had never seen: genuine peace based on mutual respect and cooperation rather than enforced weakness. Species that had served the Council out of fear rather than loyalty began to reconsider their allegiances. The Alliance's protection was offered freely to any species willing to respect the sovereignty and rights of others. Council worlds that had suffered under restrictive regulations saw an alternative that promised freedom without chaos. Chancellor Mordetha's government fell within days of the surrender, replaced by moderate factions that sued for peace and negotiated new arrangements based on equality rather than dominance. Standing in the observation deck of Terra Station 1 year after that first distress call, Admiral Chen watched as diplomatic shuttles from across the galaxy approached for the signing of the new Galactic Accord. The document would establish principles of sovereignty, mutual defense, and cooperative development that would govern interstellar relations for generations to come. "Admiral," Dr. Yamazaki said quietly, joining her at the observation windows, "do you think this is really going to work? Can the galaxy maintain peace without a central authority enforcing compliance?" Chen smiled, thinking of Earth and the long road that had brought humanity to this moment. "Doctor, humanity learned a long time ago that real peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of justice. What we've built here isn't perfect, but it's something worth defending." Through the transparent aluminum, they could see ships from hundreds of different species, representing civilizations that spanned the galaxy. Some had evolved in paradise worlds where conflict was unknown. Others came from harsh environments that had forged them into warriors. Still others were energy beings, crystalline entities, or forms of life that defied easy categorization. But they all shared one thing: the determination to remain free. "The galaxy is going to be a very different place," Dr. Yamazaki observed. Chen nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Different, but better. We've proven that strength and compassion aren't mutually exclusive, that you can defend peace without destroying freedom." As if summoned by her words, Fleet Commander Velthara approached with her characteristic graceful movement. Her crystalline form had taken on new patterns since the war's end, colors that Dr. Yamazaki had learned represented hope and determination. "Admiral Chen," she said through her translator, "the Galactic Council has formally dissolved itself. The last of the old administrative structures are being replaced with the new cooperative frameworks established by the Accord." Chen accepted this news with quiet satisfaction. "And the former Council species?" "Most are requesting alliance membership," Velthara replied with what might have been amusement. "It seems that many of them prefer freedom to the security they had under the old system." Elder Kethmore's voice joined the conversation as his holographic projection appeared nearby. "The transformation has exceeded all projections. Scientific cooperation, cultural exchange, and technological development are proceeding at rates that were impossible under Council regulations." Chen walked to the central display showing the new galactic map. Where once there had been the rigid boundaries of Council space surrounded by uninhabitable outer rim territories, now there was a network of free worlds connected by trade routes, defense agreements, and cultural exchanges that spanned the galaxy. At the center of it all was a small blue dot representing Earth, the world that had taught its children to fight for their freedom and never surrender to those who would control them. Admiral, Ambassador Thelnara's energy form materialized beside them. "There is one more matter that requires your attention. We've been receiving transmissions from beyond the galactic rim, other galaxies where intelligent life has developed." Chen felt a familiar thrill of anticipation. "Are you suggesting that we're not alone even on this scale?" "It appears not," Thelnara replied with obvious excitement. "And, based on the initial communications we've received, some of these other galaxies have political structures remarkably similar to the old Council system." Chen's smile was sharp and determined. "Then, I suppose they could benefit from learning about alternatives." As she looked out at the stars, Admiral Chen reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. It had begun with a simple distress call, a cry for help from beings humanity had never known existed. The response to that call had changed everything. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their military prowess, it was their absolute refusal to abandon those in need, regardless of the cost. And, somewhere out there, in other galaxies facing their own struggles, other distress calls were waiting to be answered.